Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Visuals of Indian nationals in handcuffs who've been deported from America to India have shook the entire nation. Now, what has happened in Parliament today is that Congress has raised protests. In fact, the entire India Alliance has raised protests over the deeply distressing and humiliating manner in which the illegal immigrants were deported from US to India in both houses. And this led to repeated adjournments. And now what we are told is that Union Minister S. Shankar will address the parliament in a short while from now. Now, the parliament had earlier witnessed an uproar as the opposition demanded a discussion on various issues, but this was also one of the major issues on which Parliament protested today, especially the India Alliance. And I'd like to show you the visuals, the kind of ruckus which happened outside Parliament. And the opposition MPs continuously raised the demand there should be a discussion and that the government should make a statement as to how this deportation happened. Is it not an insult to the Indians who've been brought back from US to India in handcuffs? In fact, there have been several interviews which are doing the rounds of these deportees who returned back to India. They've spoken to some of the social media websites, and they've said that they were literally dragged into the washrooms, with the handcuffs. They were not allowed. They didn't unchain. They were not unchained at all. So the ugly manner in which they were brought back is something like a mental trauma to them. So there you see the visuals on the screen. Priyanka Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Dipender Hooda. Then you have Akhilesh Yadav, Mallikarjun Kharge joins in there, and several other MPs from the India Alliance who've got slogans saying that, this is an insult to India. Government should come out with a detailed statement as to why this kind of a thing happened. But the big question is that will Modi government put their foot down on a grave issue like this? You can see the MPs sloganeering, and they've said that this is the biggest insult of the Indians. It is an assault on the dignity, and of course also the very issue that a military plane, a US military plane landing on the Indian soil, is it not a breach of sovereignty as well? Now these are the visuals which you see last evening when these deportees came back and then they were whisked away to their homes after the initial round of checkup. Now, I'd like to show you the tweet of what the government's attitude has been so far. They put out a fact check by the PIB last evening. This is last evening's PIB fact check, which says that the claim that Indian migrants were deported with hands and legs cuffed with chains is fake. And what they have said is that the first pic, that is a US plane with deported Indians, lands in Amritsar. And these pictures are from Guatemala. Now, that's what the PIB claimed. But as soon as they put out this PIB fact check, by morning, every website, most of the websites had a lot of interviews of these deportees who said that the manner in which they were brought back was really insulting, and they were struggling literally to even go to the washrooms. And Mallikarjun Kharge also tweeted this morning. I'd like to show you that tweet, what he has said, and that gives you the essence of the entire problem and what has really happened so far. Now, Mallikarjun Kharge says that we, the India parties, shall not tolerate the humiliation of Indian nationals. Modi government must come out with a detailed statement on the deportation and why we did not send our own planes to bring back the Indians with dignity and respect instead of a military plane landing on our soil. So this is a big, big issue on which there has been ruckus in parliament, there have been protests, and now the government, it seems, is forced to give a statement, because so far everybody was wondering that why till yesterday the government kept quiet despite those visuals doing the rounds on the social media. And if countries like Colombia, Brazil, if they could take a stand, they could protest, why didn't India protest? That's the $1 million question, and we'll try and delve straight into the discussion now. Joining me is international affairs expert and diplomat, Professor Aftab Kamal Pasha. Thank you so much for joining. We have international affairs expert Sanjay Kapoor, veteran journalist. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining. And we have K.S. Dakshin Murthy, managing editor of the Federal Group. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And I'll begin with Professor Pasha. Professor Pasha, now that we know that Mr. Jaishankar, the external affairs minister, is going to make a statement, I don't know what he's going to say, because that apparently he's going to make a statement in both houses, presumably in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. But since so far the government has kept quiet, what do you think I mean, how do you read the government's attitude? I mean, it took all the protests in parliament to force the external affairs minister to now make a statement.
See, this issue was completely avoidable. Jaishankar was there last week for Donald Trump's inauguration, and this matter was brought up, and he admitted that there are certain number of Indians who have been identified by the U.S. administration for various reasons, and they need to be deported. And the number of 18,000 was mentioned. What is shocking is soon after getting back from Washington, he has shown his incompetence by not doing anything seriously. Like in other issues, when we evacuated Indians honorably from conflict zones, from Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Gulf countries, hundreds and thousands of them, there was no seriousness shown by the foreign minister, and this is utter incompetence. An action plan immediately should have been prepared, and civilian planes should have been hired or chartered or commandeered from the other units of the military, and this should have been immediately made available for the U.S. administration to bring back the identified Indians. But Indian embassy and he himself have already accepted the American charges that they are criminals, they are violators, so on and so forth. We don't know exactly what is the issue. For us, anybody who carries the passport, Indian passport, is an honorable citizen. Unless our laws declare him to be violating of Indian laws and any criminal activity, we cannot identify these individuals, many of whom, for various emergencies, would have overstayed because of the visa issue. Many would have applied and it would be processed. There are many such circumstances, although some elements try to misuse that. So, you see, this foreign minister who is in charge of the country's foreign policy has shown no urgency, and I don't expect him to prove his incompetence and ignorance on this issue in the parliament. He will try to issue a wishy-washy statement, trying to absolve himself, and that will create more furor in the parliament. But what has become very clear is if this had happened in any other liberal democracy, they would have asked the government to sack the foreign minister, or even the government would have fallen. But since the opposition is treated by the ruling party with disdain and contempt, I don't expect honorable government to admit this lapse, which is a great humiliation for the country because it has violated the sovereignty. You see, a small country like Colombia, the President Pedro, he refused to allow the American military plane carrying his nationals handcuffed and humiliating. And he had sent the civilian planes to bring them, and they were officials. You see, in earlier occasions, also Indian ministers have welcomed them and done this. But why was there secrecy? There was no press allowed, no photographers were allowed at Amritsar airport. Why this concealment and complete blackout? Because it has exposed the vulnerability of this government, and this, I think, will carry on for a long time.
Right, but another question which arises from what you said, and I'm going to come to Sanjay now, that was the Indian government aware that Donald Trump is going to deport the Indians in handcuffs, in chains, with their hands and legs tied down like this? Was it really aware of that? That this is the manner in which
Absolutely.
Indians
You know what I'm
yes.
trying to say?
Of course, they were aware because Indian officials were already briefed about the numbers, the names, and all the details were given to the Indian embassy. Their passports were stamped, and all the legal documents were prepared. So the Indian embassy should have alerted, or they would have definitely alerted the MEA and the foreign minister. And they slept on it. They think this was routine, and stomaching the humiliation is not a great thing. they are expendable, and it's not a great. They underestimated the public response here and the outcry, which has led to this entirely avoidable
Right. In fact,
controversy.
I'll come to the same question
Well,
now
let
to
me
you,
reply to
Sanjay.
this question.
Yes, 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 Sanjay.
Yeah, I think it's very important to establish the sequence of events. The Indian government was aware of it, and the U.S. government was talking only about the illegal migration. From the outset, they encountered or intersected with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Jaishankar. If you remember, he had a meeting with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and in that
Yes.
meeting, if you visit the articles and the reports that have flown out at that time, he only talked about the immigration and what to do about it. And subsequently, when Donald Trump, President of United States of America, called up our Prime Minister the first time, and that was the first time he talked only about the illegal immigrants and how they were being dispatched. So I'm rather bewildered that the government of India gave an impression that they were taken by surprise. This is absolutely bunkam, because if you look at it, today in the parliament, you have the Minister of State talking about it. He said 507 illegal immigrants have already come to India in the last few months since October. So it is a process which is being going on. The one this has come now is in bulk. And I think the US wanted to make an example of them. That is the reason why they decided to put them in a military aircraft and put them in handcuffs and did whatever they did. And they cautioned India. They told foreign minister, they told the prime minister that this is what is going to happen. It was their inability, their weakness in their and not being able to tell the Americans, they look at, don't do this, we won't accept it. Because if they had followed, as Professor Pasha has been repeating for quite a while, that if they conducted themselves with a certain amount of courage and stood up like the Colombian president and said that, look here, they are not criminals, we are very sure. And they may be criminal for you because they crossed over into your country, but they're not criminal for us. They may not have the papers, but they're Indians, and we will bring them back with dignity. Because there is a backstory to it. The fact of the matter is that many of these people who had gone, they spent a colossal amount of money, primarily because of a very poor quality of governance that the Indian government provides in this country. People are compelled to leave. They go for long treks, they go for long journeys to US, primarily because they want to improve their lot and they want to improve their lives. And if they are not able to do it and they end up getting arrested, somebody has to take responsibility. You can't just throw your hands in the air that they are not our responsibility. And because
Absolutely.
of the fact that they have not gone as the people through proper channel, they need to suffer. We need to have another perspective on this.
Right. Okay. So, Dakshin, I mean, what are the options before India? I mean, do we say that India is very helpless in dealing with a situation like this? Is it very helpless actually? And they cannot stand up to any issue, before Trump, because Trump is so powerful now. How does one read this particular instance of how Indians have been deported? In your view, you'll have to unmute. Dakshin, you're muted, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so you have to look at it in totality. Plus, you also have to look at the specifics. As far as the US is concerned, really the problem for India is the manner in which they have been transported. Because fundamentally, if you enter any country without the proper papers, you will get deported. I mean, that's that everybody knows that. So on that score, I don't think any government, for that matter, will have an issue with the US, because the US is going strictly by the paper. You don't have papers, you come into the country without the requisite visas, we are going to send you back. So that happens all the time. It's the manner in which they have been sent that is the issue. So, which means that they've been handcuffed, they've been treated like criminals, and it also shows the mindset of the ruling government or the administration, the Trump administration, and the President Donald Trump himself in the US, and it's a reflection of that you see, because the deportation, the flight is this is not the first flight that has come to India, because as I told you in a previous show, this has been going on since 2024. In fact, there was a BBC report which pointed out that over 1,000 Indians were deported to India. So during Biden's administration between 23 and 24, and also between 24 and 25 in multiple flights, and all of them had approximately the same number of people, around 100. Okay, so
No, but
but
Dakshin, were they
yes,
handcuffed? The earlier
they were not.
batches also.
The question, yes, I'm coming to that. They were not handcuffed, because if they had been handcuffed, definitely it would have made news. They just came. In fact, the story was not even publicized in the Indian media. I mean, it was not even known, because I happened to see a BBC report which mentioned this, and so that's how I know it. Otherwise, it was completely. I mean, it was, whether it was deliberate or whether people did not know about it is a different issue. But at least they were
Right.
brought back without these handcuffs and stuff. So this handcuff business is now. It's just now it's happening. This is my guess, but we probably need to cross-check this. But my guess is that if it had been handcuffed, we would have got to know about it. So that is one thing. What the Indian government should basically do is have a white paper or set up some kind of a commission or set up a panel to figure out and talk to the deportees and look at the people who are intending to migrate to other countries, even illegally. I'm not talking of legal migrations at all. I'm talking of people who take all the risks, go to South America, go in with great difficulty, then across they walk up some very dangerous paths, and this so-called donkey route, and then they reach the US via the Mexican wall, etc., etc. Why should they do all this? So the point is that Indian government, if it really is serious, if they are concerned about Indians, fellow Indians, and why they're doing this, they must set up a kind of a panel, figure out what is it that is driving them to other countries and looking for opportunities.
I'll
And
just
the
interrupt you
logical,
here. I just interrupt you here. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has just started speaking in Rajya Sabha. He's making a statement on the US deportation case. Yes, Dakshin, over to you. Yes.
yeah. So they should, if they're really serious about this, they must look at it in depth and, ensure that no Indian is forced to leave the country for whatever reason. I mean, especially, I think from India, people normally leave for, economic opportunities, because, yeah, I mean, there's not that kind of a political persecution like you see in some of the other countries. So India, really, the government needs to look at it and do something about it. Ensure, and also there are these agents who will take them, maybe look at that as well, and kind of clamp down on those people who misuse this vulnerability, make money on it, send people in all kinds of manners. So I think there are a few things which the government needs to do to address this problem.
I was just trying to listen to what Mr. Jaishankar is saying, that he's saying that illegal mobility has associated. I mean, there have been hardships. There have even been fatalities. These are the things which he said initially. Needs of deportees are attended to. So he's just trying to assuage the house in a sense that needs of deportees are attended to, and this kind of a mobility has been happening. This is what he has initially to say. But I'll come to Professor Pasha. Professor Pasha, how big is this issue of military plane landing on the Indian soil? Could this not have been averted by the Indians? And as you said rightly initially, that if we can send our planes to evacuate the Indians who were stranded in other countries, why not this time? And why couldn't the Indian officials in America also, why couldn't they put their foot down on this?
Well, you are repeating the same question I have told you. This was completely avoidable. The embassy was given all the details. Like in any other cases, I worked in the embassy, and such cases are immediately brought to the notice of the embassy. And there is a consular contact which is established with such people who are detained in any country. But the embassy in America and the consulates, 3 consulates which we have, people contacting them is so difficult. They are busy with their own work, so on and so forth. Sometimes personal overtakes the official work. So there is a lot of things much desired in a functioning of the embassy. And they should have known this will create a outcry and furore once the military plane lands. Especially a few days back, Colombia had shown the whole world, how a small country can work for pushback. We are we are many times bigger than Colombia, and what we lack is the spineless
Right.
response from the Indian government has exposed and made us more vulnerable. And one shudders to think what the Prime Minister will go and discuss with Modi and allow him to put India under shackles like the Indians were brought in the military plane. Is he going to browbeat India into supporting its policy against China, or end our contacts with Russia, or treat us like a banana republic? Because what is very clear, he wants to show the sovereignty of America, that we can do whatever we want, no matter what the world thinks, what the United Nations thinks, what international law is. We decide, and this is the Hindi word, jiski binds, jiski laki uski binds, dadagiri type. So they have contempt for UN, they are withdrawing from WHO, Human Rights Council, and they have contempt for ICJ, they have sanctioned ICC. So this is sort they are shredding their own so-called rules-based order into pieces. So India, which has taken the lead in BRICS, which has been calling for reforms in the UN and international financial institutions, is at the receiving end. Now we have to buck up and decide, who is our real friend, whether America is a real strategic partner, friend, or it is treating us with contempt. And we should decide what is good in our national interest to strengthen ties with BRICS countries and take the lead. India is not so helpless, and why should we make ourselves vulnerable to this kind of lawless, kind of chaotic administration, which doesn't respect rules, which doesn't respect other human beings? Easy, as I said repeatedly, the Indians, even those who have gone legally, if for some reason if their visa has expired, they are also detained at the immigration, or they make surprise visits. It is we cannot assume, like your other speaker had said, that all are crossing the border, all the 100 plus who have been deported. I'm sure some of them are genuine, who are genuinely through proper papers who have entered, and because of some compulsion they overstayed, and they are under arrest and deported. So you see,
Right.
under our law, they are citizens, and we have no business to accept the American propaganda that they are illegals and aliens and rapists and criminals and all these baseless charges. And I mean, the government should outrightly reject their contention.
Right. In fact, as Shankar has just said, Sanjay, I'll come to you now. He's saying that we will attend to the concerns which have been put forward by these returnees. This is what he says, and he's also said that they will engage with US to ensure that no further mistreatment of the Indians happens. Now, do you think that that's too
No,
little?
I think he should also assure that no more military planes and handcuffed Indians will be allowed. He should have said this.
Okay, okay. No, he's still speaking. He's still in the process of speaking. Maybe he speaks later. But Sanjay, what would you really say to the initial comments which are now coming from S. Shankar? We do get a glimpse of what he wants to say. Basically, saying that has government them given them any financial aid? That's what the opposition has been asking. And he's speaking on it that we'll try and address concerns. We'll ensure that US doesn't mistreat the Indians further. What would you really say to that? I mean, is this reaction coming in late and as an afterthought? Does it not look like an afterthought? Because opposition protested in the morning, there was huge hue and cry on the social media, and it's now that the government has decided that they should come up with a statement. Why couldn't they act yesterday itself, or the day before, when the pictures started coming in?
I think there's a attempt at obfuscation which is visible at the moment. If you look at it, they were very clear when the aircrafts are landing. Why did they divert it to Amritsar and not to allow it to come to Delhi? Why did they prevent the photographers from coming there? Why did they
Yeah.
rush them out to their respective places? Why did they decide that the 31 Gujaratis will not be exposed? I mean, you just look at it. They were familiar with every possible detail about the people who are coming, They've conditioned that they will come in. And it's not that they did not know about it. I can tell you, I was reading the testimony of some of those people who have been detained, and there have been interaction between the NGOs who have talked to them. They also talked to the counselors coming from the Indian embassy, and some of them have even been asked whether they would like to go back to India, and they have categorically said no, they don't want to go back. So, in a certain way, there is a problem where it comes to trust deficit when it comes to the government of India. People back home, they think that they will be better off in the detention center, and they would probably go through the process that the US administration is willing to offer rather than be sent out to India. The fact that it has happened is, I think, some kind of a setback for them because they spent a colossal amount of money. They were mentally prepared that they will have to go through all this. So they did not anticipate Mr. Trump coming in. Some
But
of them have
Sanjay,
said,
in
yeah.
your view, should the Prime Minister now be going to US at all? His visit is scheduled in February, sometimes later this week. Should he be going at all after what we have seen?
I mean, I have been one of those from the very outset who have been saying the PM should not go and suggest some kind of protest as to how his people have been treated. It will raise his talk within the country, but the truth is that somebody needs to talk with Mr. Trump. If nobody talks to Mr. Trump, he'll continue to, send people back home, and he has nothing to lose, and he thinks he can manage his way around. And the manner in which he shut down USAID and shutting down many other entities which with government of India and other countries are dealing with shows that he's in a belligerent mood. He has the audacity to say that he will take over Gaza. Nobody in his right mind would have said something like this. But
Absolutely.
he's
I'll
going
just
up
interrupt you
as a
here,
head.
Sanjay, because now the details of the statements are coming. I'll just read it out for the viewers as well. Jaishankar has said that it is the responsibility of every country to accept its nationals if they are residing illegally abroad. His remarks come amid opposition uproar over the issue, and then he further goes on to say that it is the obligation of all countries to take back their nationals if they are found to be living illegally abroad. Then he further states that the Indian government is in touch with US authorities to ensure that the returnees are treated properly. We are engaging the US government to ensure the returning deportees are not mistreated in any manner. Yes, Sanjay, over to you, and then I'll take the concluding comments from Dakshin. Yes, Sanjay.
I mean, we can carry on saying that he's done well. But I was also reading one of the statements coming out from a member of parliament from the Congress party, Rajesh Shukla, who's also a member of the standing committee. I read that
Yes.
on Twitter, and he said that about 7 lakhs, 50,000 people, possibly Indians, undocumented Indians, who are
Hmm.
also likely to be found and be sent back to India. And many of them have been there for long years, and they have done rather well in terms of fighting the reasons why they left India and went there. They're prosperous, and the tragedy is that they will lose the status that they enjoyed in the US, the kind of wealth that they had accumulated. So India is not prepared for even coming in of so many people. Although it's a country of 1.4 billion people, but 7.5 lakh people, if they decide to come back to India, it would be a huge, huge shock. And I don't think we have the ability to absorb that kind of shock. US maybe in the coming days may come out with a proposal because Mr. Trump has his ability to make an offer of some kind that they may be used in certain way, not in the way that they have been brought in, or maybe some papers may be issued. I don't know. These are still early days of his madness. So that is how we have to deal with. But in the coming days, you might have a situation where heads of states of various countries might start putting pressure and demanding that the US treat these people better. But let's see what happens.
Okay, so Dakshin, I mean, what do we make out of the situation which is currently on now that Jaishankar has given a statement? He'll make a statement in Lok Sabha as well. How do we assess the situation currently? And do you think that the Modi government is really on the back foot, or do you think that Modi will be able to salvage by making a statement, and then again everything will be normal between Donald Trump and Modi? Is it going to happen like that?
Um, um, I mean, Jaishankar's statement is on expected lines. But before I continue, let me clarify that when I said that people from India have taken the trouble and going, they've crossed the wall and reached the US, that doesn't mean that all of them are doing it. Yes, there are people who have overstayed their visas in the US, but as far as the law is concerned, they're as culpable as those who jumped the wall. So it doesn't make it any better, right? So that is one thing. And the other thing is that, uh, this kind of a issue can, can go on, because the point here is fundamentally what the US is doing is not it's not a sudden move. The US the Trump, in fact, has been warning that they're going to do this. The election campaign in the US was also, there is a large issue. There is a large part that was discussed on this illegal immigration. But if the Indian government had really been interested, they should have offered to the US that they would take care of the deportees. So then the US would not have bothered to send the military plane. So India should have just informed the US that they would make arrangements to bring back the Indians who are staying there illegally for whatever reason. But India did not do that, and the US, the way the mood that Trump is in, they're not going to be waiting endlessly for India to make such an offer. So that is what they just put them in a plane and sent them across. So it's as simple as that. So it's basically India's lack of proactive move that has made the US send them in the manner that they have done. So the culpability lies both with the US and with India.
One quick question from Mr. Pasha before we wind up the show. Professor Pasha, this mentality of handcuffing the nationals and sending them in chains, why do you think that the Trump is doing this? And in earlier also, when there have been deportations, it hasn't happened. But now we see Indian nationals handcuffed, bound in chains, and they are sent back to the country. What do you think? I mean, is he into some kind of a macho game that, look, I am the powerful president now, and look what I can do to the Indians who've been illegally staying here? Is that the message which he's trying to give to his own political constituency in America?
No, before I answer your question, let me just clarify the previous speaker. You see, I was there for 6 months till November 8th last year, and I have a 10-year visa, which is issued every 10 years, and I've renewed 4 times. And initially, I did not know that you cannot stay in this 10-year visa for one particular period beyond 6 months. So the first time when I went in 99, I overstayed for a few days, and it was a major problem for me. Even though I was a diplomat, they would not listen to my case, and it had to be brought to the notice of higher ups, and otherwise, like in my cases, there are many students and others who go on tourist visa. If they overstay and if they go for any government job, they are immediately detained and arrested and kept in the detention facility. We are not illegals. We have entered the United States because they have given the visa. But many people are not aware. It is not stated that you cannot stay at one stage at one time beyond 6 months. And they're very strict with this. Many, for health reason, accompany elderly patients, and they have been detained and put in jail, and no access was given, and they were deported, and charges were levied, and there are innumerable cases. It is not just 1 or 2. You see, last year, every year I go for 6 months. Last year, quite a few top software engineers were sacked by many companies, from Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, so on and so forth. And they had brought their families, wives, and they had taken loans for the house and cars and their expensive education for their children and all. Suddenly they were jobless. So they applied for visa under a different category, and their applications were still being processed, but many of them were detained. I mean, this was shocking to me, that all of a sudden the husband is arrested, and the wife can't even speak English, many neighbors, and their children were stranded, and there was nothing. They could not repay the loan. They were their house was taken over by the bank, and the children were thrown out of the school. So it was a nightmare to listen to such cases. So there are very harrowing stories. They treat everybody as with a criminal intent, so on and so forth.
But this is the
Answering
law
your
across the
question, you
world.
see, Trump
This law is
wants to
across the world
show.
is like
No, let me
US
complete.
is not
Let me complete the question which Nilu has asked. You see, the Trump administration wants to show that they can do whatever they want, whether it is India or Colombia, but they dare not do this with any of the European countries or Australia and New Zealand. So in that way, our muted response or lack of response has shown our weakness, and they will try to exploit this weakness and expose the incompetence of the government in the eyes of our own people. That is what it all amounts to.
Right. But highly unfortunate what has happened. And now, since Jaishankar has said that they are in touch with the US authorities, they will ensure that further mistreatment of the Indian nationals doesn't
one
happen.
second.
Does it? Yes. Yes, Akshay.
No, just wanted to say that this is the law across the world. Even in India, if a foreigner comes and overstays, that person can be deported. So it's not something that only the US does. Anywhere in the world, if you overstay your visa for whatever reason, you are in trouble. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't do it. There are cases I have known where students have overstayed and they were not detained. We provided all facilities, and the embassies were contacted, and we honorably sent them back, issuing extended visa. We don't immediately detain them.
True. Okay, so we'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Pasha, Dakshin, Sanjay. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you.